Right. I was just notified this being recorded, so I think we can start. All right, so I'm going to be talking about Jarvis today, which is my SharpestMinds project. Let's quickly go over the agenda. Talk about what is Jarvis, kind of high-level architecture. I'm going to talk about a trigger word model, a Q&A model. I'm going to do a little demo, and then talk about challenges that I had and that I'm having right now with the project. So this picture in itself is a little bit confusing because I just said Jarvis is from Iron Man. I couldn't find Jarvis free picture to put in there. They were all commercial, so I didn't, being a good citizen of the internet, I put one that I could find for free. It's from Star Wars, but the idea is the same. I thought it would be really cool to have a very simple version of Alexa or OK Google or Siri that can answer kind of factual questions. And that's kind of where the idea from Jarvis came on. Actually, initial idea was to do simple math equations, but then I realized symbolic math is really hard. And Facebook wrote a paper about it, but I really didn't want to go through the whole thing because I only have 3 months. And this was actually turned out to be to be pretty hard. I can only imagine how math would be hard. So anyways, I landed on the idea of just doing factual questions. And example of a factual question is, you know, when did the First World War start, for example, right? Stuff like that that you could read in an encyclopedia. Okay, so this is a high-level architecture diagram that I made yesterday, and it's, you know, there's a lot going on, but I'll try to go step by step and kind of explain what each step does. You know, the first thing that happens, obviously, is a client sends an HTTP request. In this instance, it's from a browser, but you can imagine that being from anywhere. And then the body of that request is a raw audio file. And then I take that raw audio file and I have something called a trigger word model, which basically what that does is it tries to find the trigger word in an audio file. And a trigger word in a speech recognition terminology is basically a word you want to sort of highlight. In OK Google world is it's OK Google. In Baidu, it's Hey Baidu, or whatever the appropriate translation of that is, or in Siri, it's Siri. So what I do is I have a raw audio file, and the model tries its best to find a point in time where the trigger word was set. And then once I have the timestamp from the model as a prediction, I cut the audio at that point in time, and then I pass the rest of the raw audio into the Google speech to text API because I didn't want to make a speech to text model as well. I already have a lot of models. So I pass it to their API, and what I get back is a raw question, ideally. Just the question, the text of the question, sorry. And my trigger word is Jarvis, right? So it'd be Jarvis, when was the First World War? It will go to Google Speech API, and the response would be, when was the First World War? And then from that point, I have a text of the question, and then I go into something, what I call a document retriever. It's a standard terminology in sort of information retrieval world. Basically, I take that question, and on a side, I have an entire Wikipedia indexed in Elasticsearch, which was actually quite a challenge to do. It was kind of fun. And it's still really not even close to being done, but even getting it there was insane. So I query my Elasticsearch database, and I get back 5 documents, for example, that are relevant to the question. The way Elasticsearch works is it does something called a TF-IDF similarity measurement, and then, you know, it has the question, and then it has the document, and it tries to get the relevant ones based on that. And then I get those 5 documents or 5 articles, and then I pass it into something called a paragraph ranker that I made. And basically what that does is it splits everything into paragraphs, and then it does the similarity thing again. I'm using Spacey's cosine similarity to measure the similarity between a question and a paragraph. And I do that for all the paragraphs. And then I take top n paragraphs. I believe it's 3, I can't remember. I take top 3, and then I pass those to a Q&A model, which is an Albert model from Hugging Face. And then that kind of there's a strategy around, if you read a BERT paper, there's a specific strategy how you actually split those articles, split those paragraphs sensibly, and there's a little algorithm in itself on how to sort of pick the best answer from all the paragraphs. And then from that point, once I have the best answer, I just return it as a response. So that's sort of the high level architecture. I mean, I'm tired even talking about it because there's a lot, but we can talk about it later in Q&A if you have any more questions. And code is also open sourced. Well, at least most of it is. So you can, like the stuff like the actual models and training data are not, but the actual, you can just look at it and hopefully it'll be fairly, hopefully it'll be help with the understanding of this picture. I'm going to talk about trigger word model real quick. I know it's a super tiny picture, so can you guys see it? Can you see the actual? Okay, cool. Yeah. So this trigger word model, it's a standard sort of speech recognition model. It's probably not the most cutting edge, but it's something that I'm familiar with and that works just fine. It's a GRU, a recurrent neural network. It takes a spectrogram as a as an image. Then it does a little convolutional layer here. And then I have a GRU dropout batch norm, GRU dropout batch norm dropout. And then I have the last dense layer, which is time distributed because it's a GRU network. So, it's a standard speech recognition thing, standard speech recognition architecture, and it works just fine. I did all of the training myself. I collected the data manually, and then I synthesized a bunch of training data from the sort of training data that I collected. So I had people say words, like Jarvis, airplane, pineapple, banana, whatever. And then I sort of synthesized that together into a giant training set. So that's kind of what trigger word model is. And it was, again, trained from scratch. And this is all in TensorFlow, just because I'm more familiar with TensorFlow. For a Hugging Face, I originally trained my own BERT model on a Squad 2.0 data set. If Squad 2.0 data set is Stanford's data set for question and answering, it basically has question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And in 2.0 version, some questions don't have answers. And there's, question, context, answer, question, context, answer. And the context is the thing that you try to find the answer in. So I trained my own BERT model. I can't remember the results on top of my head, but it was okay. It wasn't that bad. It was fine. But then while I was doing something else, I realized somebody else built an Albert model that's very fine-tuned on 2.0 data set. So I just took that one. And it was better than mine. I needed more training time and stuff to get mine to that level. And it was a question: can BERT version even do it? But I suspect if I went with original BERT version, it wouldn't be 50% difference. It might be like 15% difference. But I just went with this one because I can. I haven't actually proven that those numbers, so don't phone me on that. So that's the Q&A model. Let's do a little demo. So this, I currently, I have this is, living in my domain. I deploy this with the help of my friend, who's a DevOps engineer, and he kind of helped me get to AWS. But right now it's sort of what I call closed beta, meaning that I sort of turn on instances manually and I let people in, just until I get to the point where it's I'm over the hurdles that I'm currently experiencing, and I'll explain what those hurdles are in a bit. But once it sort of gets production ready, so to speak, I'll open it up to everyone. I did this before we actually started the call, because I don't know how audio recordings work over Zoom. Can you hear me what I'm gonna say or whatever? But basically, let me know if you can hear this audio. Yeah, basically I asked, hey Jarvis, when did the French Revolution start? Right? You have to believe me on that. I can't overplay it over the thing. But I asked that, and then the answer was 1789, which is true, and probability was 83%. Because audio was so crap because I have issues with Web Audio API. I actually added just a text box, so you don't have to ask with audio. But the whole point is, like, half of its glory is in audio, kind of. But I opted also for this option in case you can't get the audio working for various reasons. So I have this little thing here. One was Novak Djokovic born, which is a famous tennis player or whatever, and the answer is 22nd May 1987, which is true. So you can kind of get the answer there as well. We can try it. When did the French Revolution start? We can try this and see what happens. It actually takes a long time to get the answer as the app stands right now, just because it's doing all the work. There's a lot going on. So it takes a while to get an answer back, but that's okay. I don't care about that as much. So let's just see here for a sec. Let's see what's going on the server. Okay, it should be here in just a sec. So again, it does. I didn't measure how long it usually takes, and that's why I wrote 3 minutes. As you can see, my CSS skills are amazing, and my HTML skills are amazing. I'm kidding. Of course, they suck, but I was just trying to get it done. Let's see. Come on. Okay. Well, this is, oh, there we go. 1789, right? So, okay, so that's a very short demo. Again, once I get over certain hurdles, I'll release it to the world and everybody will be able to use it. But I'm shutting it off for now periodically. First, because it does cost a lot of money. It costs $30 to actually keep it alive for a month. And then it's not really there yet, so I'm kind of keeping it on a side for now. Okay, so that's the demo. Currently, the challenge that I'm having with it is, the first one is the trigger word model itself. As you can, it was only trained on, I don't know, 15 people worth of voice. 15 people said words, and I took those words and trained it on that. So that's not a large sample size. I did my best to synthesize things and make them artificial, but it's just not enough people. I need more people with different accents, not just Midwest, not just Eastern time zone. I need more people to say more words that I can train on. I also need people to kind of say words on a different quality of speakers. So like I'm using Bose headphones, for example, right now. Microphone there is pretty good, but if you're using some cheaper headphones from Amazon that you bought for $10, the quality is going to be way different than what I have. And just like different levels of quality and different words and different people. I just need that times 100. And that's why Amazon is so good, because they collect all the data and they retrain on data that you said. Well, I don't know if they're doing it. I know they used to do it, but I don't even know that. But that's how I'm assuming they actually do it. They have lots of data to train on, so they can use those voices, and that's why it's so good at picking it up. So that's one thing, and I in general need more training on it. For Elasticsearch, I literally picked up Elasticsearch a month and a half ago, right? Definitely not an expert in it. There's a lot you can do with it. I'm actually playing with it right now. So the document retrieval process, I just have a simple mapped query right now. But the problem with Wikipedia database is that, for example, if you ask how many people live in New York, there's a dozen articles that just talk about how many, like just the words how many, which is weird. But there's a lot of those articles, and when you do a simple match query, those get emphasized before the actual thing you're trying to find. So I have to be smart about the way I do these queries, and one way that I'm trying to do that right now is I'm going to do NRE tagging. So I'm going to actually do named entity recognition while data is going in and save that data that way there's like a few plugins and pipelines and things that I can do to save the data in the NRE manner, so it knows that New York is a city or a location or whatever, and knows what people are, which words are people, which words are not people, blah blah. So I can use and then once I have that indexed, I can use that information to actually query when I get a question, right? So if I get a question, I can put the question to the same pipeline and tag it in the same way, and then use that information to put, if I have the question, how many people live in New York, I can put more weight on the words New York, and I will know it's a location, and those sort of things I'm currently exploring. It's going slowly, but it's going, and I think that will be a big plus for Jarvis for a lot of answers. For a lot of answers, it cannot answer right now. Like, for example, if you ask how many people live in Columbus, Ohio, it won't give you the answer because the top end documents that I retrieve don't even have Columbus, Ohio in them. So it makes sense that it doesn't give an answer. But if you ask what's the population of Columbus, Ohio, then it does give an answer. So it's all about how you phrase the question. And I'm hoping that the NRE tagging will help me with the those sort of, how many question problems. And then miscellaneous items, I need a better development and deployment pipeline. It's just nuts. Like we just got it working. I have to, it's a very manual process. So I want to have GitHub Actions and all the nice flows. Obviously, I need to do some design in CSS. I'm personally horrible at CSS. I've done it before, but HTML and CSS are something that are from my past life, so to speak. And I haven't really done any of it in a very, very, very long time. So I just have to get it to look nice. And then documentation, documents are non-existent currently. So I would have to, I want to write documents and put them on, on my repo so people can actually replicate the project and make it more of an open source project so people can download and run it on their own and blah, blah. But I'm not even, I'm not there yet, obviously. Issues while developing. Honestly, transformers and the whole Albert thing and BERT thing is just ginormous. It takes a very long time to even wrap my head around what was going on. And I'm not coming from an NLP background. I'm more of an anomaly detection, standard like classification regression type of a guy as opposed to NLP guy. So it was just very overwhelming, and like there were at least 4 or 5 points during this while I was doing it that I was like, maybe I just picked the wrong project. This is just really hard. I remember that distinctly about 5 or 4 times. That's how I felt, just because it was really, really hard. There's just a lot to learn and a lot to wrap your head around. And it was just, it was just a lot. There's a lot of engineering work and not enough time. So just to give an idea, a lot of times it was 20 to 25 hours on top of everything else that I'm doing. So I was spending 80 hours to 100 hours a week, my whole work, right? So that's 100 hours, 80 to 100 hours for 3 months was just insane. It was a lot. And then there's a lot of engineering work that's not data science work, right? So, Elasticsearch, a lot of Python around the code and around the bottles and everything that's not data science, there's a lot of that I have to build. And then at one point, this is actually a funny story. And, it'll depend on person to person, should I do that or not. But when I started the project, I started training my LSTM, or GRU, sorry, my GRU network. I started training it on, I don't know what I was using, Google Cloud, Tesla V100 or whatever, top of the line, super, pricey, but whatever. But it was just so tedious to have to start the thing. There's 50 or 20 steps around the actual thing you're supposed to be doing. And I was just wasting a lot of time on all of those things. So I'm lucky enough that I was able to afford it. So I went to Micro Center and I bought my own data science rig. I spent a lot of money, bought it locally, and everything went smoothly after that. I was just very frustrated at how much setup I had to do and how many things I was, now do this and then do this. And then it was, how am I going to transfer? I think my, I'm going to lie, I can just take a look. I'll let you know right now. My training my training set for Jarvis for the trigger word model was 6 gigabytes, just the training set, right? It was 6 gigabytes. And then, getting 6 gigabytes to the cloud, how am I going to do that? There are ways of doing it, but I am just wasting precious time on doing other things that are not going to benefit the actual project itself, and that I already know how to do. I just don't want to do them. So I literally went to Micro Center and I just bought my own computer. Bought a 2080 Ti that was top of the line at the time. Now there's 3090s, 3080s, and it works great. All of a sudden, I trained. So it took about 3 hours to train 150 epochs in the cloud. It took about 25 minutes to train it locally. So I saved up an hour and a half of precious time. So I highly recommend buying your own hardware if you're in the same position as I am. If you're, it might not be the smartest thing for you. It's a very intimate decision, but for me, it worked out well because I had access to raw power right here beside my desk. The project went a lot faster. If I was dealing with the cloud, it would just be a lot slower. Now people will say, "Oh, you don't know how to use the cloud," which is still irrelevant. That might be the case. I just didn't care. I was able to solve it with this, and I just, it was something that my time is super precious, and I didn't want to waste, again, 100 hours a week. Every hour counts. So I wanted to speed up that sort of thing. So that's about it. That's all that I had. Now I think there's questions, and I got claps. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just a small correction. I actually don't know how Amazon gets data. I assume that's wrong of me, but there's definitely I'm sure there's a smart way of getting all the voices without infringing privacy. And I'm sure there's a process around that I'm just not aware of, but that's the only way that I know of to get good training data is to get actual voices saying things.
Yay, thank you, Nikola. That was such a great presentation. Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. Well, I mean, I wrote a couple of questions that I was gonna ask you afterwards, but if anyone else has other questions, you can kind of unmute or type in the chat. This is the first time we're trying Zoom for mentee webinars and stuff. So we'd also like your feedback if you guys prefer Meet or Zoom or whatever. So kind of my first question is I'm kind of curious about the Elasticsearch that you mentioned. Where are you getting the, for example, you asked when was the French Revolution? You said the top end documents. Where are you getting the documents from that?
So it's just so from Wikipedia, right? So the Wikipedia has a data dump that you can download from Wikipedia. You just download the data dump, and there's a lot of stuff you have to do to get that data dump into Elasticsearch index. Once it's there, each article on Wikipedia is a document in Elasticsearch. So when you ask when did the French Revolution start, what's going on there is that it's going through each document and it's trying to match the document with the question, the best that it can. It's a very high level similarity thing, but once it does, it's it tries its best. It mines the Wikipedia database. That's where the knowledge comes from. So yeah.
That's so cool, and that's really exciting. This question, I know you talked a bit about this in the beginning or before a lot of people joined. So what kind of inspired you or motivated you to work on kind of a question answering type
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, and this was going to be the answer to one more question, I think, because I saw some of the questions beforehand. What advice do I have for people who are starting the projects? I think you should work on something that you find really exciting. Otherwise, it should also be oriented, in the field you want to work in. And there's SharpestMinds is really good sort of, hey, this is how you pick a project. But I think it's also very important to pick something that you are really excited about. And because it's a lot of work that you're putting into it. And there was 5 times where I really wanted to do something else, just because it was just sucking everything out of me. But I think you should pick something that's really, really exciting, because that excitement is going to sort of carry over through 3 months that you have a mentorship. So excitement was the number one reason I picked Jarvis, because if I can build that, that's just insane in my head. As just somebody who loves technology for the technology's sake, it's just nuts that I can even do that. So that's why.
So the other kind of question I had, so you touched on this a bit earlier, so about like your tips and advice and stuff. So you also mentioned that aside from like the data science aspect of your project, there's a bunch of stuff that's more like engineering, like software engineering
Yeah.
kind of work. How did you deal with like, or do you have any tips for like learning all those new like engineering-esque like fringe data science things that you need to know to build this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been building software since I was 14. So I've been doing this for a long time. And the software engineering part didn't come hard to me. It was just annoying. So it's, I think I'm really like, as far as the software engineering part goes, it wasn't, well, it was hard, but it was more annoying than hard, because there's so many, like, just getting the core parts right was just a lot of time. If that makes any sense. So the way that I solved it, I just did it. It wasn't hard for me, just because I wrote a bunch of code before this, so it was just fairly easy to spin up and just write a bunch of things that I need to write. Well, besides Elasticsearch, I didn't know Elasticsearch, so I had to learn that. But the general programming around it, like building the document ranker, building the paragraph ranker, building the whole, now do this step, this step, this step. This step wasn't hard. It was just annoying. Well, it was, I would lie if I said it wasn't hard. It was more annoying than hard. That's what I'm trying to say. As far as tips go, I would, the best way I think to sort of learn programming is to do things and try to build things yourself. I probably am not like, I can't remember how I started, because I started when I was 14 and I'm 27 now. But I remember what I did a lot was I just tried to build things and see what happens. And it's also really important to get your fundamentals, right? So, there's a book called, oh gosh, it's escaping me. The pragmatic programmer, for example. It's one of the pillars of programming. Everybody who knows programming reads it. Uncle Bob, all those guys, they're great. Read those books, and they're very important. And you have to kind of do it in conjunction, I think. And I had a CS degree as well, which helped obviously with all this. So yeah, that'll be my long-winded answer of, it was hard. It was more annoying than hard. And get the basics and build things on a side that are not this. Maybe build a calculator, build a game, or whatever is exciting. But best way to get through this is to kind of learn by hand, and also in the fundamentals on the side.
That's a really good answer. Yeah, so I think we're gonna pause to see if anyone else, like, if you guys have questions, you can just unmute. Like, this is like a pretty chill, like, environment.
I guess one question I had was, in the whole realm of NLP and QA, people probably spend most time on creating data sets than training things. I'm talking about not like using standard benchmark data set like Wikipedia, but for example, in my domain, if I were to do a Q&A based on some knowledge graph of medical text, you have to like assess the quality of the data. There might be conflicting facts. Articles might be talking about two different facts all linking to the same entity. So yeah, just wanted to see what your comment would be on that part.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think I was sort of not really cheating, but turns out the Wikipedia data set, the Wikipedia articles, the Squad 2.0 data set that Albert was trained on is a very good representation of Wikipedia. So if you want those sort of clean, factual answers about how tall is Eiffel Tower or something. Like Squad 2.0 data set will work just fine from what I've seen and from what people have said. But if you want anything more specialized, like if you want to answer law questions, or if you want to answer medical questions, you have to train it. You have to do the whole data thing, like the data exploration and blah, blah, blah for that specific domain. I was just lucky enough to kind of take the shortcut and not have to do that. If I did it, it would be even better, obviously. But again, there's only so much time. And that's my second model that I was training. So I think that I was just happy with Squad 2.0 and it just seemed to work fine for the kind of the application that I want to be using this in, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
I have another question, kind of just like from a mentee standpoint. How did you kind of like plan out, or like, you know, I know you mentioned you were talking about like, yeah, it was like 25 minutes of work and
Yeah.
everything else that you're doing. Like, do you have any like tips for or methods for planning out like how you know, do your project? Like, how do you know like what parts need to be done, or just like how do you do like project management for like your SharpestMinds project?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So any sort of project that I'm doing, not just this one, is I sort of like to tackle the hardest things first. It's sort of like 2080 Puerto principle. This might be a hand wavy answer, but bear with me, it might make sense. Puerto, was the guy that said, hey, 80% of the wealth comes from 20% of the people. Turns out that principle can be applied anywhere. So if you look at your project, think about 20% of the stuff that's going to produce 80% of the results. And that you can kind of see, even if you look at my project, like you can see that it's not pretty, it looks ugly. It doesn't, like if anybody who built websites before would say it's pretty crappy, but the 80% of the value comes from the 20% of the functionality that is in there. So that's kind of how I tackle the project day to day. Was just I build the trigger word model first, and then I build the Q&A model second, and then I worried about everything else afterwards. And that's kind of also the reason, because I'd say 8 weeks out of 12 were spent on those two core things. And then you can see that everything else was kind of janky because I had 4 weeks left or whatever to squeeze everything else in, but I didn't care because I knew I produced the most value. Even if it didn't go into the app, still just having those two things done was pretty cool for me. So that's my main advice. Do the hardest things first and then other things later. And usually you know what the hardest things are when you have a problem. So that's the answer.
I mean, for what it's worth, I think it looks really nice, but that's just my opinion.
Oh no, I mostly use that as a joke for my web designer friends that they have really beautiful websites and stuff, and I just have this a few boxes and it was even worse than that before. I didn't even have like we're waiting for an answer or whatever. It was just sitting there. People didn't know what was going on. I should probably put something there that says loading or whatever, because it's not. So yeah, I didn't even have that at the start because I didn't even think of it to start. That's why I do user feedback thing. But secondly, I just didn't have the time to do it as well. So
yeah. So the last question that I have here is, so it's really cool that you kind of worked on this for your project and you got all this exposure to like question answering and also just like, looking at stuff like transformers and everything else. So do you think that, from here, this is where you wanna, this specific field within data science is what you wanna do? Like, is this what like you're recruiting for, or like, do you think you wanna continue down this field, or like, I guess like what are the high level like takeaways that you have career wise from this?
That's a good question. So I think it highly depends on the employer that I have. I find that at least a lot of things that I'm doing right now, and a lot of those problems are just business operations, regression, classification stuff. It's nothing cool as NLP. It's more boring, like, hey, how much money am I going to make tomorrow or whatever. I mean, that's important if you're running a business, but as a data scientist, it's not as exciting as NLP, right? But I think personally, professionally for me, I'm really excited about anomaly detection. I think that's a really cool field, and I'm excited about NLP. although I admittedly don't have as much experience with NLP as with I did anomaly detection, isolation forest, and blah 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 blah. So I think anomaly detection and NLP is something that I would like get more into it, but I think it would only warrant more work on it if I get a task to do that, right? If I do a startup on my own, or I get employed by somebody who needs NLP stuff. I think this is plenty of exposure for me for now, but I would like to get into it, yes, at some point more. That would be fun. Well, yeah, other guys, people, if you have any feedback too, just, let me know, or, you can say it now too. It's just, I will, I'm hoping that I can get, in, next 2 weeks, I can get the 2 to 3 weeks, I can get the NRE tagging working properly and being able to get better queries. So once I get that, I think I'll be, maybe more open to sharing it with everyone. Not everyone, but like specific people still, but more wider pool of people. And then after I fix the web audio thing, which is going to be a giant pain in the neck, I'll release it to them so everybody can use it and run it and stuff. All right, see you, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if anybody else has any other questions, but I just wanted to thank Nikola again for being the first.
Thank you for organizing it. It's really cool.
Like, this was super fun, and like it was a really great project. Super excited about this, and also just like I don't know, I learned so much. And just
thank you, I appreciate it.
Of like the event, if you guys wanna present your project or talk about kind of like what you've learned at SharpestMinds so far, we're starting this webinar. So like mentees, so we get the opportunity to like share what we're working on, get feedback on it, and also just like practice presentation skills.
Yeah, those are important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like ping me if you guys want to like do this. I know Simon is going next, so I'm gonna be making his poster as well. If you guys have like poster requests or like whatever. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, you can find me in Slack, or I don't even know if I have social media, but you can find me in Slack. If you have any questions, ping me. A URL of the project it's on GitHub. It's I'm gonna share that. I guess I didn't supposed to put that there, but here's the project if you want to check it out. I think it's in the poster too. Yeah, so you can just check it out and let me know what you think. Hopefully, at some point, someday, you'll be able to open up a PR and it's not a complete mess if you want to improve it. Right now, it's very it's just a bunch of different notebooks. Nobody knows what's going on except me. But at some point, hopefully, it'll be a real open source project that people can actually contribute. So that's project URL. No. Thank you. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. All right, I guess with that we're gonna end. But yeah, like message Nikola or me if you need anything. And yeah, we're super excited for this.
Right. See you everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.